Securing property has long been slow and costly for small businesses and local entrepreneurs. The new electronic deeds registration system promises faster and accurate transactions. Fintechs like TransBridj are making it easier with quick funding and simplified processes. Michael Lenz, CEO of TransBridj, joins me to unpack more on this. Michael, welcome.
Morning, thank you for having me.
Well, many SMEs find property acquisition slow, expensive and paper heavy. With the launch of the eDRS, what difference will local entrepreneurs notice when trying to secure commercial property?
It actually spans further than just commercial property. So it moves from residential into your commercial spaces as well. And really what eDRS does, it speeds up that back-end process, which is once we get into the deeds office, your lodgement, and then from registration. So what it does is it takes a process that can sometimes take up to 21 days and is promising to do that in 3-4 days. So really sort of condensing that period, which means that a property transaction will come out of the deeds office quicker, and you have that exchange.
Michael, I wanted to talk about how TransBridj's technology complements the eDRS.
So as I mentioned previously, where the eDRS is sort of your last mile in the transaction between actually getting into the deeds office from a lodgement to registration process, what TransBridj does, it comes in the front of the process, because in order for you to get into the deeds office for lodgement, you need certain costs paid. They might be your rates and taxes up front, clearance figures that need to be obtained, COCs, so certificates of compliance, and these sit in front of the transaction before you can even get to a stage of lodgement. There's a time factor involved in terms of getting these costs paid, and often what happens in a property transaction, again, it can be residential or it can also be on your commercial side. It's a requirement in South Africa that you have a rates clearance certificate before lodgement. These are often costs that the seller is not aware of, and they're caught unaware. And that can then also cause a delay in the time to getting these costs paid. And they can amount to quite a lot, because if you can imagine that some municipalities require these costs to be 9 months in advance of your rates and taxes, your compliance certificates. If it's residential and you have levies, the same would apply, 6 months, 9 months in advance, and they add up. So what TransBridj does, it is your first mile by covering these costs for the seller, taking that hassle and headache away, and taking a process that again can take days and doing this within 24 hours. So we are the beginning of the transaction, and eDRS is the last mile end of the transaction. And through that, we just simplify that process and bring down your time.
It really seems like it will take that headache away. But I wanted to talk about how you see AI and automation replacing traditional roles in property transactions, and how will this benefit e-commerce businesses?
Absolutely. The world that we live in is now AI based. We look at the platforms that we sit on. Digitization. Something that's exciting to us in TransBridj is that we now have the ability to go and take away manual processes, do AI vetting in our system, do checks and balances that would have been telephone based or in person, paper heavy. Signatures that are still sort of wet ink, and digitize that process, very much like your eDRS system does. We at TransBridj do that as well, and again it just becomes seamless in terms of a transaction. And it takes pressure off everyone in that ecosystem, and that's how we've developed our platform, being digital, that it works for your seller, your purchaser, your realtor, as well as the attorney, because they also are stuck in a transaction or in a matter where their function is to move the transaction through as quickly as possible, but then they experience these roadblocks, and we take the roadblocks away and take the pain away for everyone in that property ecosystem.
And just continuing on digitization, how will that stimulate economic growth and investment in South Africa?
Again, it has to be a movement, and it's got to be a movement forward. And through these kind of initiatives, it brings in those kind of partnerships. Like I'm so proud to say that in terms of this platform that we've developed, a first in its field in terms of what we do from covering these upfront costs for sellers and realtors, by the way, as well. So what we'll look to do is upfront realtors commission so that they don't have to sit and wait in the food chain while this transaction is occurring. But in developing the platform, we partnered with a Kenyan organization that developed this for us. And I'm so proud that we could keep it on the African continent and have this kind of initiation. So already in terms of the partnerships and a sort of African continent growth, we as TransBridj are already part of that ecosystem. And as I said, very proud of that.
Michael, just briefly, the eDRS rollout will be phased over 5 years. How can property professionals and also businesses make sure that they're not left behind in this process?
So absolutely, it's a 5-year rollout. At the moment, it's in its pilot phase. So the Registrar of Deeds has selected certain attorneys and professionals that can onboard at the moment. Once past the 5 years, it'll be fully implemented. But getting into the process, looking at other partners and other stakeholders like ourselves as TransBridj in the process is a good place to start, because we're there, we're live, and we can flow these transactions now and in time integrate into this whole sort of food chain that is now digitized, giving you transparency and giving you the assurance of a process that can be audited at the end of the day.
Well, it seems like a positive change is coming our way, which I hope all stakeholders will leverage, but we'll have to leave it there.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Well, that was Michael Lenz, CEO of TransBridj, sharing his insights on how the eDRS and fintechs are transforming property transactions for small businesses.